Welcome to the place where we learn about and learn from the leaders in our field who are powering human creativity. I am Aaron Dworkin, and this is Arts Engines. Thanks again for joining me here on Arts Engines. Today's guest is Patrice Floyd, who is the founder and artistic director of Javacya Arts Conservatory. Patrice, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm excited. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
No, well, absolutely, and we are so excited and are thrilled to be able to be partnering with you as one of our creative partners. And I thought it would be good just to start off, if you could just share with our audience kind of the breadth of the scope of the work that you do at the conservatory.
Well, the breadth and scope of the work includes private lessons, orchestra programs, and contracting with public schools so that particularly children who are under-resourced can study string instruments. And then we bring them all together, and we bring as many students as possible together to do massive concerts so many times a year. But we also have a portion called Arts in the Heart, which is our artist series that brings advancing students, college students, and professionals together. So that's another segment of what we do.
Awesome, awesome. And of course, you're addressing all of these fronts. And so I'm curious, especially as founder, how did that come about, right? Like, were you finding a need as a teacher yourself, as an artist yourself? What prompted you to take that step and put that weight upon you to actually build and create something that could have so much of an impact?
Well, Aaron, it started off as in my neighborhood. Let's start in my neighborhood. I was teaching my own 4 children. And then the other parents knew I was teaching my children. And so before you knew it, I had outgrown my house. There was just no place to put another child. And so I went to Florida A&M University, which is our local historically Black institution, and asked them, could I use a classroom? And they said yes. And that was 42 years ago. And so we grew, and so that's a long time. That's a long time.
Right.
And so that's how we began. It was
Absolutely. No, and it's a beautiful thing. And so I'm curious kind of, because I also want to talk about your actual partnerships, especially with schools. But before that, especially, there's a number of people in our audience who either have dreams of starting an initiative, something that they feel is needed, or have started it and are on that journey and are facing, some of these tough challenges. And just wondering, as you've been building the conservatory and building this impact, are there any of the kind of key challenges that you feel were there that you could speak to the audience about, here was one of the biggest things and how I tried to overcome it or how I tried to address it?
Well, the biggest challenge was that early on, people couldn't afford private lessons. They wanted it. It's like wanting that shiny car car that you see in the window, but you can't afford it. And so I had to figure out how I was going to pay for all the people who could not afford it, because eventually I had to get some help. And, to be honest with you, I've only been nonprofit for 5 years because I went to the community to ask them for everything I needed. You call it old fashioned, call it mom and pop, but I would play concerts at churches the old fashioned way, and pass the hat. And then I would ask for individual donors, because I still believe that money that comes from individuals will build a program faster and sustain a program faster than anything else. And so, Aaron, people probably laugh at me, some of my friends, but back in the day, if we had to have a concert and a dinner afterwards, where the dinners were $25 and people, it was small, but it was a way to engage. I didn't know I was engaging the community. And so the other night when we had a concert, I said, there are people that are here that was with me when I was 17 years old. And they're, of course, in their 80s and 90s, because those were the people that sent $25 and et cetera, et cetera. I didn't know what this, about community engagement. I just had a need. I wanted to grow the program. The program was growing and I had to find a way to grow it. And I just called people. I said, well, you know what? We're going to do a magazine. The page is $200. Can you do? And five people would get together. You know, it's old fashioned, but it worked. It worked for a long time. And so I think sometimes we think too large, but the small, there's nothing wrong with small beginnings.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love how you shared that too, because also that's when I think about the early days as a founder myself for Sphinx and so many projects. You know, people like to think they see giant organizations and they're like, oh, okay, so there's all of these things and tons of people and systems and staffing. And when you're working on building an initiative, when you want to make a difference in a community, you have to build it. And that is, we love to have these terms like community engagement, but this is engaging your community. And of course, I think that is what led to the sense of ownership on the part of your community in the program that has led to such sustainability. And I think that's so important and so great for so many in our audience to hear, especially those who are working on initiatives themselves.
Yes.
And are looking for that inspiration.
I
I
wanted to
thought I
mention
would,
really,
oh yeah,
I wanted
please.
to ask you, say one comment right there. I wanted to mention that right here is when I found out that the most available buildings there are churches. And some of them are beautiful. I'm in an Anglican church. Our orchestra program is based in the Anglican church. We don't pay for anything. And because they're predominantly non-African American, they wanted us. They wanted to engage with us. It's one of the most beautiful places to play music in Tallahassee. It's built on an old English model. So I know what you said about people just not understanding, just about engaging sometimes, but that's the simple part. There's so many ways. You don't have to pay for a thing. They just want you to come through the door.
Yeah, absolutely. And
I'm sorry to interrupt you,
oh
but I wanted
no,
to make that.
This is so great. And you're touching on what is, I think, one of those key fundamentals as we think about arts and arts leadership, which is partnering and collaborations. And so if you've got this partner in the community, that is one of the most extraordinary venues to practice our art in. And there's available space and time. It's just a win-win. And so building on partnerships, I think, is such a key aspect. And actually on that front, you've of course built wonderful partnerships with schools, and wondering if you could share kind of how your partnership with the schools works, and also if there's other things other than the arts that are involved in that, like sciences.
Yes, yes. With schools, what I did was realize we had a situation where I opened a program and they were taking so long to understand the music theory, and we figured out they couldn't read. They couldn't read anything. They were developing slowly, and these were sharp kids, but they were left behind. And so we went to so we utilized what's called 21st century grant money, where they want you to come in usually to teach 1 day or 2 days. The kids don't own the instruments, et cetera. So we flipped that and said, listen, we could not only deal with this child academically and build a self-esteem, but we could fundraise to have instruments that the kids can take at home, not leave at school, um, offer it more days. And the biggest part is when they begin developing, let's find a way to give them private lessons, particularly in Black communities where there are all these group programs, but nothing to develop them as individual artists. And so finding the funding to help them as individuals, maybe 3 in a lesson, 4 in a lesson, to build upon what's happening in the orchestra program. So that's been the greatest need for me.
Wow, absolutely. Amazing, extraordinary work that you are doing. And unfortunately, we're just about out of time, but I always like to ask my guests this question about when challenges arise. And, you know, in 40 years of doing this extraordinary work and impact, there has to have been some tough days. And in that, I'm just wondering, as a leader, what would you share to those who watch our program, who themselves, most of them are leaders in their own right? What do you do on those toughest of days when things seem insurmountable? Where do you turn to for inspiration, for strength, guidance as a leader?
As a leader, maybe this is not known, but I'm a reverend first. So I'm a violinist and a preacher. And so I'm a praying person. Just to be really honest, not deep for me. I'm a
Yeah.
praying person. But I also have friends that I can call, particularly when it's finance. Finance is the biggest part. I have people that say, listen, can you sew this in? I know I'm pushing you, but can you sew this? You know what? Most of the time they say yes, or they'll find somebody.
Wow. Patrice Floyd, you truly are one of the arts engines who is powering human creativity in our world. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I'm honored.